I worked on this presentation with Aaron Chalmers. I want to give him credit, he's in the room. But we've streamlined the content. There's not enough for both of us to present today. But I wanted to give him credit, and I wanted to make sure that if you have any really tricky questions, you pin down Aaron at lunch to answer those for you. So I'll return to a view of the kind of shifting landscape of data and AI, and the different ways in which that landscape's shifting. So, fundamentally, and this is something we spoke about earlier, the technology itself is evolving apace, and there's a lot of investment going in, so things are moving, changing, things are improving, new things are being released. We heard, for example, about agentic AI, the use of kind of orchestrators calling other models, and Jensen Huang hailing this, the kind of era of agentic AI when we're just 2 years on from kind of large language models being something that was kind of very interesting to people. Regulation, of course, is evolving. It's responding to the technology. Probably the kind of landmark regulation that most people know about is the EU AI Act. That was rolled out August of last year, but there are aspects of it that come into effect August of this year and then August of next year. Pretty much every jurisdiction is coming up with some form of regulation. We heard about DeepSeek's disruption, releasing an open source model. We also saw the general kind of theme around competition between the foundation model developers and how that's creating better models, but also at radically cheaper prices. Skills and staffing obviously having to change in response to the technology. So, for example, LinkedIn has kind of cited that job roles, including the term MLOps, are up 250% in the last couple of years. There are brand new job titles featuring kind of prompt engineer or AI engineer that didn't really exist and are now the fastest growing on the platform. There have been some kind of documented incidents of kind of intellectual property leaking by virtue of using some of these kind of large language models. So there are definitely needs to think about security and privacy. And then, of course, an undeniable fact of kind of business is that industries themselves are constantly changing. So Trevor touched on that, but beyond the kind of technology landscape, there are all sorts of factors, tariffs, but of course a noteworthy one that we've spoken about before. One of these events is climate change, climate risk, that has a major impact on all sorts of industries. The use case that we shared was around really the impact that it's had on insurance and reinsurance risk and pricing, therefore. And with all of that changing, the shifting landscape, you can think about it through two different lenses. So there's, and this is something that, again, Trevor touched on earlier, there's the board level, which are really thinking about your enterprise AI strategies, and those are fast evolving, responding to that dynamic landscape. And then you have the on-the-ground level where we have teams trying to deliver solutions. There's an imperative to deliver solutions that kind of add value to the business. We spoke about the gap with all the kind of media attention, with the vendor influence, especially with literally, as we heard, hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into the space. There is no doubt a lot of kind of influence at that board level, and somewhat of a kind of a disconnect and a gap. So we'll be addressing that. The kinds of things that enterprise AI strategies need to consider, they have to be thinking about regulatory compliance, scalability of solutions, protection and appropriate use of data, integration with other systems, return on investment, and of course, much more. I've included kind of a selection of questions that would change based on company and industry, but these are the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about. So are our AI decisions explainable to regulators, customers, and stakeholders? How seamlessly do our systems integrate? What's our strategy for driving trust and adoption? Where are we seeing the clearest return on investment today, and how do we kind of double down on that? So a framework that we've introduced at prior Thorogood Data and AI updates is the notion of a framework that we call people, data, process, tools, and at the heart of everything, ethics. And we think that this model, this framework, can be applied either at the kind of enterprise AI strategy level or at the on-the-ground solution level, and it can kind of bridge that gap and ensure that the investments that you're making, responding to the imperative to kind of add value, are in line or in keeping with kind of an overarching enterprise AI strategy that will be evolving, that doesn't have a single answer to all questions, can't consider all the quirks of all the use cases that may exist in a business. So just breaking down that people, data, process, tools, ethics framework a bit further, what does it mean? What does it encompass? So people really refers to the skills, the culture, and the ownership that you need to either deliver a solution or within the firm overall. Data addresses kind of data access, data quality, governance of data, processes around automation, compliance, visibility, and tools. Well, that's addressing the tools that you're using. How well do they integrate? How scalable are they? How performant are they? And ethics, of course, needs to conform to regulations, needs to kind of uphold your company's values and have integrity, and there needs to be accountability. And of course, the dynamic landscape, bringing that back into view. We talk about the V's of data, volume, variety, and velocity is growing. People are becoming more productive, empowered, and informed. Tools, we've heard and seen, they're becoming better, they're becoming faster, cheaper. Processes are becoming smarter, optimized, adaptable. Some of Scott's kind of demonstrations evidence that. And ultimately, our ethics need to become truly embedded, human, and proactive, because things are moving quickly. We need to anticipate future needs. I'll return to an approach that we've shared before. I won't belabor it too much now because we'll be delving into it, but both ends into the middle framework. We think it's important to consider people, data, process, tools, and ethics throughout. So the people that you'll have involved, the stewards of the data, the end consumers, the people that will be developing in the middle. So all of those considerations kind of relevant throughout that both ends into the middle framework. But what we're going to do is kind of explain that framework a bit further and break it down into its kind of constituent parts. And these three things need to be considered kind of simultaneously. Obviously, we're going to walk through them sequentially for the purposes of today's presentation. But it's really important to answer, what business problem are we solving? How can we effectively use our data, and which tools or technologies are best suited to solve this problem? And kind of delving deeper into each of those questions, the late Steve Jobs said, you've got to start with the customer experience and work back towards the technology, not the other way around. So when we're thinking about the business problem, we're thinking about what is the core problem that we're targeting, who are the primary stakeholders or users of the solution, what are the pain points, needs, and goals, and how will users interact with the solution. And I think for me, this is kind of the key part, or the most interesting of late. We're kind of moving from an era of very much kind of dashboards and structured reports into an era of chat interfaces that we've seen today, voice command interfaces, obviously kind of agentic solutions that can go away and deliver deep research for you. So there are many more ways for you to deliver the solution to end users in a way that kind of meets them where they are. How can we effectively use our data? Much cited today, obviously, we're a big fan at Thorogood. Andrew Ng said, without a solid data foundation, you might as well be building your AI house on sand. So some questions to consider when thinking about data. Where is the data stored, and what types of data are already available? Are we sitting on hidden or underutilized data assets? I think Robbie's kind of demo spoke to that. He was sharing, very lengthy transcripts in different languages. So kind of an underutilized data asset that company had. What level of data engineering is required to make the data usable? We'll get into that in the next session. What data governance policies and controls are in place? Again, very important, and we'll get into that in the next session. And finally, I guess for me, a key question, how can we turn our data into a strategic advantage? In prior of these events, we've said we live in an era in which data is everything and everything is potentially data. The evidence suggests that companies that are data-driven, there was an MIT Sloan Wharton survey a few years ago that indicated that data-driven companies tend to be at least 5% more productive and 5% more profitable than their competitors. So making data a strategic advantage is an imperative. And finally, thinking about the tools or technologies. So which tools or technologies are best suited to solve this problem? I think a great quote that encapsulates our thinking here is, make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler, said by Albert Einstein. So what is the simplest, most effective solution that meets the business need? Would the solution benefit from the kind of technologies that we've been sharing today, AI, Gen AI, agentic AI approaches? Which tools or platforms are available to use? And how can I deliver fundamentally return on investment? So I think in these updates, we've sought to kind of demystify the technology and show it in action. But really, we are also trying to be kind of judicious about using the right tools and the right combination, and not just technology for technology's sake. So delivering return on investment. So I thought it'd be useful to apply this framework, see how it has been applied to a customer. And this is a business case that those familiar with the series will have seen at our last of these events. Again, the recording is available, and we're happy to present more about it if you're interested in the specifics of it. But this is some work that we delivered for a global medical devices company. And I'd say really the kind of instigation of this was from the regional president of the company, who wanted to transform their organization to be much more data-driven, especially at that senior leadership level. They tend to be busy, quite meeting-oriented, and kind of lean less on data than he thinks or thought that they should. So what we were trying to do is help them with their all-important product portfolio kind of decision-making. And that, as a kind of medical devices company, they're rolling out new products all the time. But we needed to meet the users, the senior leadership team that were making these decisions, where they were. So really, they were making these decisions in meetings. So we needed an interface that could communicate with them in natural language, and that was either verbal or typed. We needed to design it for multi-user simultaneous interaction. So different people in the room could ask questions, building on others' questions. And ultimately, obviously, the data needed to be kind of trusted and relevant and of high quality. So how can we effectively use our data? Well, the beneficial scenario that this company found themselves in is they'd already invested in building a robust, trusted, governed data lakehouse that had the sales and profitability information that they needed. They also had a lot of useful dashboards and reports in a combination of actually Tableau and Power BI, so in different places, in different technologies, but those were mostly used by analysts, underutilized by senior leaders. So what we did was not completely wholesale replace everything that they had, but kind of supplement the solutions with new technologies to, again, solve for this business problem. So again, you can watch the presentation if you're interested, but effectively we kind of instituted this agentic AI approach that provided a chat interface that they could pull up during senior leadership meetings where they could speak to the agent, or they could type questions into a web app interface, the kinds you've seen already, and it would either return results based on the most appropriate kind of information in dashboards or reports, or it would run a quick query on that data lakehouse that they'd invested in. And that was built with a combination of existing investments in Amazon S3, Tableau, Power BI, Amazon Athena to run the queries, Amazon Lex as the kind of the agent, and Kubernetes hosting the kind of web app. So it was a combination of the kind of right technology to meet their needs, and again, a consideration of the business problem, also of the interaction and meeting the users where they most needed to be met. So hopefully that was an effective illustration of the kind of both ends into the middle framework. And again, collectively, we think applying both ends into the middle and a consideration throughout that of your people, data, process, tools, and ethics should help ensure that your on-the-ground solution delivery aligns with your overarching enterprise AI strategies. And one of the key components of what I've been speaking about, the middle question there and the top piece of that framework, is the effective use of data. So I'm going to hand over to Sanjay now, who's going to speak more about data engineering and data governance.